But that's felt like a good counter to the market is when rates are high, become the bank instead of the borrower. If we're selling the land with seller financing on payments, we're the bank.
Right.
So all of a sudden we're not arguing with people about a point here or there. It's like you're charging 10 to 12% interest and you're still beating the bank on land anyway,
Right.
right? And banks don't want to get stuck with lands.
Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Micah Johnson, and today I'm joined by Travis King, who's been making some serious moves in land real estate and land investing since 2013. I'm really pumped for today's show. I'm excited about this. Travis, welcome in, man. Glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me, Micah. As you know, before we jumped on here, I could talk all day about land, so I'm happy to share the message and be the land evangelist for everybody.
That, man. Love that. So, again, if you're listening, I think you're really going to take some value out of today's episode. Travis has been investing in land for quite some time. We're going to dig deep on some strategies that folks don't think about, things to pay attention to, some land cycles that are a little bit different than the normal market cycle when it comes to a house. So let's dive in on that. First off, for people who may not know you yet, Travis, tell us a little bit about yourself, what your main focus is right now, and the markets you operate in.
Yeah, well, it's all things land for us. Really, we try to stay in our lane, in our niche, with inside of land. Like I'll share, there's a lot of different avenues inside of land, but everything is centered around land is that asset class before anything's built or anything goes vertical, right? It was all land at one point, and I just think there's simplicity and beauty in that, and that's kind of what attracted me to it. Is I was buying houses, I had rentals, and I'd kind of read the Purple Bible, Rich Dad Poor Dad in the early 2000s in my young 20s, and I didn't study it. I read it and kind of used it as motivation, and I just jumped in at a time when everything you bought was going up. Like 2004, 2005, you couldn't make a mistake. Everything was appreciating. So I thought I was a genius. And then like '08 hit and it exposed me for what I was, which was a young, naive, ambitious, investor. And there were some expensive lessons learned, really expensive lessons learned. So when I kind of decided I didn't want to give up on real estate investing, but I wanted to find an asset class where the mistakes weren't as expensive, right? And same thing, the assets weren't as expensive. So I didn't have to spend 200, $300,000 on a rental house and come up with that 25% down and, all those things. So I started looking at asset classes where you could get in affordably, right? And get in cheaply, affordably, and make a lot of small bets. And the big mistakes wouldn't wipe you out, right? Or set you back too far. And that's kind of how I stumbled across land, and I started out like buying land and cheap land on auctions, online auction sites, and then listing them on eBay and flipping them there. And then later
Man,
we learned about you're at the mercy of the auction schedule if you can only get your properties from the auction. So he's waiting for the next auction. So we learned about off, marketing to off market owners, landowners. So using direct mail and in a way to kind of control our own lead flow and deal flow. And I felt like we got really good at that, and that's where we found most our traction. Um, and then we've kind of just yeah, just tried to wash, rinse, repeat, and then adapt along to the market along the way.
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
And that's really the part that about real estate where it's not a fix it and forget it industry. It is something that it grows. It has to adjust as the market moves because there's cycles to it. It's not stagnant and it's been cycling for a long time. That's the guarantee is it's going to do it. And about the time you think you got it figured out is when, oh, hold on. No, there's this shift coming that I'm going to have to think about, okay, what's next? What do I do? How do I pivot in this? Which is something you said y'all went through a little bit. Can you dive into that for us?
Yeah, well, I felt like we really had a good system down, and it really was just a wash, rinse, repeat of buying properties in our markets, which were Arizona primary was our main market. But then as things were cranking up, we moved in Texas, Florida, started doing this in other states. Um, but when rates, in 2022, mid 2022, when rates just started to skyrocket, some of these lots that builders were gobbling up, they pumped the brakes quick. I mean, you know what I mean? They have memories, right? And I think they had this flashbacks of the Great Recession, and so they weren't giving it a year or two of building spec homes to see what the market was doing. As soon as rates went up, they kind of finished up the houses they had in the works and weren't taking on new projects. At least a lot of the ones we were working with. So we saw a market correction come really fast. Yeah, it came really fast. And our business at that time was built on kind of a high volume of transactions, primarily at like 25K net profit was the majority. That would be like the medium. That's the bulk of our flips. And then you've got some, bigger six figure, like one off or once a quarter type deals. But we were doing about 60 transactions a year, right? And
Man,
when the market shifted on us, the our buyer pool kind of dried up, or at least it shrunk, right? It shrunk. So that left us with some inventory. And at the time, also, I'll kind of sneak this in along the way is after became a full time investor, I got in all these communities and was making friends and messaging people and helping new people out and kind of informally got into some coaching and consulting
gotcha.
and not charging anybody anything, just helping people out that weren't as far along as I was. And that led to some joint venture opportunities and where we would either put money together or I would fund their deal, and then that led to a much bigger opportunity where we created a funding company. But through the funding company, I gained exposure to many, many states outside of my own markets, which I felt gave me a pretty good read, on the macro. Instead of being in the 3 states I was flipping in, we were now funding in 29 states, right?
Whoa.
So when the market kind of shifted as a funding company, we held inventory. As a land flipping company, we held our own inventory that was listed and all of a sudden the days on market, right, was going up, and we're going, yikes. So for us, I think when things started to slow down, it took a while to figure that out. Hey, we've got to slow down acquisitions, sell the inventory, move what we have, and then see how we kind of pivot a little bit to adapt to this new market. And a lot of our sales were cash sales on buildable lots, like in urban areas. And we'd always sold rural vacant land, but we kind of adjusted the business model to where there's more focus on large rural vacant land and selling it with seller financing. That's kind of allowed us to weather the storm of rates Whereas if a lot of the land is being sourced to builders and the builders are slowing down, right? We kind of pivoted and rates were high. Well, if we're selling the land with seller financing on payments, we're the bank. So all of a sudden we're not arguing with people about a point here or there. It's like you're charging 10 to 12% interest and you're still beating the bank on land anyway, right? And banks don't want to get stuck with land. So it's not that they won't lend on it. They just generally have a pretty extreme down payment and a pretty high interest rate to make it worth their while if they get stuck with it. But what that does, that creates opportunity for you, right, as an investor if you're seller financing, because you can beat the bank at a rate that is a double digit interest rate. So we started originating a lot of seller finance notes with 10.9% interest, creating a lot of monthly cash flow, 250 to 750 a month note payments. You know, so that was kind of our pivot. It's just, and we just kind of now we run both product lines like buildable infill lots and then large rural vacant land, usually usually subdivided and then sold with seller financing. But with the pendulum just swings with the market and rates, and we'll lean into one and ride the wave when it's high, and then we'll back off and go the other direction. But that's felt like a good counter to the market is when rates are high, become the bank instead of the borrower.
If you're looking for consistent, high quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency, it's the most sophisticated, data driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Now, your buyers for those, is it other investors you're selling to, or those landowners that are doing those seller finance notes? How do you go about finding those buyers?
Yeah, so we list everything with almost everything with agents. Even like a double closed deal, which is a tool in the tool belt. It's not our business model, but even those we wouldn't list ourselves. We list as agents just because early on we listed a lot of stuff by ourselves and just handling those buyer leads from Facebook and Craigslist was not something I'd rather have a root canal than just talk to another Facebook, lead, right? Or Craigslist. Is this still available? Yes, it's still available. The listing's still up, right? So no, everything's with agents on the dispo side.
Okay.
Even if it sells with seller financing, and we list it with seller financing, we're going to have an agent list it for us. Sometimes it's recreational. I'm in Phoenix area, so people might want to go up by Flagstaff when it's 110 in the summer and it's 20 degrees lower up. They might want to go up there, pull a camper on their recreational land. They might hope to build a cabin someday, a second home. It's really common, right? Up north, northern Arizona. So some of it's residential, some of it's recreational, but that's usually what that kind of avatar, that buyer is. It's buying on payments. It's not often they would be living on it right away. It's kind of they've got a someday plan or they're using it recreationally.
Interesting. And those are high paying customers. You're talking about an end user still at that point where you can get retail value out of what you're doing. And man, that's a
Yeah,
solid customer to
and
work with.
retail value, that's just it, right? When anytime you sell something on terms, like when even us as investors, right? We can get our cash price or we can get our terms. You're not going to get both. And same with the buyer. They're not going to get both. They can't beat you up on the listing price and then ask you to take payments.
Right.
Generally, if you're offering payments, you set the terms, right? So there's not
Love
going to
that.
be, if you list, especially if you list and promote and push seller financing, you're not going to be doing price improvements or price cuts. It's just such a massive, massive buyer pool when you accept payments. Um, but on the again, you're not going to stack cash doing that. That's more of like you're just building some recurring,
Right. Some
dependable
monthly
note
recurring revenue.
income.
Right.
So there's got to be a balance early on. I had too heavy of a focus on seller financing. So we would buy these properties at 45% of retail, which even that might blow some people's mind if they aren't familiar, right? But we'd buy it at that, but then I would take 20% down when we resell it on payments.
Gotcha.
And you do that too many times, you end up with a nice monthly recurring, but but broke, right? The bank
Right.
account's
Yeah. No
broke, but you
cash.
got 500,000 in note equity, right? And that's kind of where that was that harmony, finding that harmony for us was a learning lesson for me, and that's right where we're at was just about I think 460,000, close to 500,000 in note equity that wasn't liquid, was right? We couldn't get to it,
Right.
and then we had, like, I forget, we got up to about 14,000 a month at that time recurring note income, but it was this situation where, yeah, you're getting 14 grand a month, but and you got half a million in note equity, but there's no you don't have six figures, you don't have cash in the bank really.
Right.
So nowadays
Exactly.
we're more intentional about kind of our on our dispos, how much seller financing we do and how much cash sales we do.
It makes sense, man, because you got to balance your buying power, right? Know exactly what it is you're trying to do because you're not just investing in real estate, you're running a real estate investing business. Like and that's something that, if you're listening to this, I've noticed in my time in the industry, those are two different things. Like, especially when you're doing it at that higher level, it's not an accident that you get deals. It's a machine that you built that churns them out. And that is a very specific thing that you have to create to be successful like you're being at the level that you're being. It's not a mystery how it works.
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
And it's a different game when you have a stable W-2 job with a solid paycheck, and this is just a side hustle, something you're doing on the side. It's kinda gravy, right? It's extra money, it's a second income stream, but when you go full-time investor and you're now cannibalizing those profits, owner paying yourself, you're now buying your own health insurance, there's just not a lot of room to make these big expensive mistakes or spend a year iterating or adjusting to the market. You gotta make quick corrections, right? So that's really kind of for us, but that the beauty of those mistakes, it led us to go, okay, and well, now we're cash strapped. What do we do? And then I had to go out and find outside money, right? And if I had a better harmony early on, I wouldn't have put myself in that position. So making those mistakes put me in a crisis where I go, yikes, I need right to go out and get outside capital to do more deals and start maybe doing bigger deals and more cash deals. So that for me was our biggest, like, early on, game changer, I guess you'd say, was finding outside money for land. And houses, hard money is not I mean, that's just so utilized and well known, right? But land
Right.
is a little bit of a stigma with it. Not a lot of, private lenders, hard money lenders wanted to lend on land. When was asking, there was nobody doing it, now there's scores of companies that will fund specifically land deals because the industry's matured a lot in the last 10 years. But early on, I was reading books on how to raise money, how to build credibility kits and pitch decks and all these things. And man, it was a grind trying to convince people. I'd tell them read them my resume, give my transactions, and I would see their eyes light up. Then I would say that four-letter word land. And then they're like, oh, I'm out. you know, so it took
Right.
us a while to find outside money, private money. But when I did, we started using that for all of our cash flips and we started focusing on bigger cash flips. And then we started self-funding the properties that we intended to resell with seller financing on payments. And that seemed to be a really good balance
That makes a lot
we've
of
been
sense
able to
too.
use that mix as we've scaled.
And it's right on time. So there was something you said in our pre-recording call. It was specifically about marketing, but it's also about it kind of goes hand in hand what you're talking about in your business where learn that first thing, get that first thing locked down, that thing you're super good at. And then the market itself will bring around the time to adjust that. Okay, so you got strapped for cash and like entrepreneurs do, we create all our own problems typically. If you zoom out far enough, like you're setting you don't realize it, but you're doing it in the future where you got to that point. All right, now I need other people's money. But without all that pre-work, Going out and getting somebody else's money, now it becomes infinitely harder because you got to sell them on faith and not on the reality of, okay, this is what works. And, but again, like you said, once you get that money, and you hear all the time in real estate, make money with other people's money, is the game changer. When you get that access to capital, now your plate can get bigger of, okay, now I can look at these other deals much bigger than I was doing before. However, the timing of it lines up too, because without the previous experience, you get into some of those bigger deals, man, you without the prereq knowledge, without the
Yeah.
undergrad knowledge, those master
Right.
level courses will eat you up.
Yeah, and what I would say that goes along this with that, getting access to a capital partner or private lender, whatever you want to call them, right? Um, it's not just the financial or transactional part of it. It's a mindset shift, and it also creates like a confidence when negotiating, right? So I would be wiggling in my seat when I kind of I would say I harpooned a whale, right? So I reached a guy that had 130 properties, 100, by accident at this time. It wasn't intentional. He had been buying at tax deed auctions. His dad taught it to him, and he'd been doing that over the last 3 decades. And, this was early on in my career, and we had nowhere near the money to buy all of them or even a third of them or anything, right? So, um, and I remember negotiating, and I'm posturing because he's like, "Well, there's about 30 I wanna hang on to, but the other 100 I would sell you," right? And this would be a situation I don't even know what it would have cost us, but it probably would have been, over $1,000,000, and a lot of these parcels were 20 to $40,000, right? But either way, it would have been well over $1,000,000, and I didn't have $1,000,000 sitting in the bank. Right, but I'm negotiating, right, and I remember kinda squirming in my seat, and I thought, "Man, I'm glad this isn't a video call because 'cause I'm sweating," I'm like, "I don't these are great properties, they fit my business model, they're in my market, I know I can resell them, right? But I don't have the money." And just that nervousness and almost a little bit of that imposter syndrome, feeling that, boy, when money was lined up and we had a blank checkbook, it just became about, "Okay, let me pick through and tell you which ones meet our criteria, right? And which ones I want to buy, right? Which ones we're going to buy first. And here's our buying order. And then here's my budget. But they're not posturing and pretending. You've got the money behind you. And that kind of allows you to negotiate with a confidence that's authentic and real versus like posturing and pretending, right?
Right, exactly. Well, you hear a lot of folks saying, I used to say this myself, you do your best work I do my best work with my back against the wall. Wait until you do it without your back against the wall.
Yeah.
Get into that position you're talking about, like you just said, where when you have the money behind you or whatever it is, the confidence that shows up, you are not the same person. You're thinking differently. You're thinking about the problem differently. You're approaching it from a completely different vantage point than when you're sitting there with your back thinking of all the things that can't go wrong and how I need to do this and how I need to do that. And now you're introducing so much more that can make the deal mess up than when you're positioned correctly, where you can look at it, like you said, and say, you know what, all right, man, 100 of these, well, I'm going to buy them in a certain order, and this is what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
this is what I think, and this, and this. What do you think? Now that person's like, wow, okay, this is a serious guy. These are real folks. This is
Yeah.
a real thing
This is what
versus
separates you from the other people marketing, and the first time that I got asked for it, the guy's like, "Well, I everything sounds fair, sounds agreeable, we're closing through title, there's nothing fishy, it seems like, about you. All I'd wanna see next, so that I know you're not gonna waste my time, is a proof of funds." And it was like a 400 and some $1,000 purchase, and I'm like, "Ooh, I don't have 400K sitting." But it was the first time I'd ever been asked for a proof of funds, right? Well, that'll never happen again because I'll have that lined up, right? And
exactly
it's those things, that's I generally borrow the quote or the phrase, "Dig your well before you're thirsty," because there people will tell you this, and I'm guilty of repeating it until I got enough years experience behind me. But I used to say, "Hey, find get the deal and the money will come," type of thing. But sometimes it's a real scramble to get that money, and then some of the money people gotta do 3 or 2 wire transfers to to get it to you,
right.
and so I tell you, I'm a fan of kinda having that lined up, ahead of time
Me
versus
too.
just getting the deal on the line, and then figuring things out.
Yeah, that's like a young man's upfront game, in my opinion. Like once there's nothing like waking up with the money. From 2018 to 2020, I basically represented a hedge fund and woke up every day with $1 billion to spend. I never felt more powerful in my life. And to literally wake up each day, I got the money to spend. What house do you got? I would go to meetup groups with literally a piece of paper that says, I have $1 billion to spend this house I'm looking for. What do you got? And the kind of power that gives you, you're not worried anymore. There's no like survival mode involved. You now become the thing that people want. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. You got all that? You can do all that? You're this real thing? Okay. Here's what I got. Here's where I am. But however, that I want to zoom back on this before we finish out is that did require learning how to do a lot to be able to represent that
Oh,
kind of money,
yeah.
right? So there's education involved. It doesn't just come with, right? So if you're listening out there, watching in, you build yourself to these points. You know, Travis, you said it, you didn't come out with private money. You had to learn a whole different lesson before you even thought, oh man, I need to go get this and then build that way into it. So you said that you're a coach, you do some work in that regard. Tell us a little bit about that. And what are some main lessons for folks that you wouldn't mind saying before we head out for the day?
Yeah, well, what I'd say is the prize that people don't talk about along these entrepreneurial journeys, and whether we call ourselves, certainly no Elon Musk, right? But at the same time, I'm not trapped in a cubicle like some of the guys that still are at previous companies I worked for, right? So I'm living life on my terms, and I'm happy. But what I would say, you're focused on either maybe becoming a full time investor or achieving some financial goal, but like the prize is like along the hero's journey, right? The
Mm,
all the challenges that you have to overcome along the way, the growth that comes with that, how uncomfortable I was talking to these, like you said, these hedge fund white collar guys with all this money, and I'm just flipping dirt, right? Here I'm this blue collar guy flipping dirt. It's my side hustle, and I'm trying to talk these guys into sharing their institutional type money with me. These family office people. So all of these things or having those seller negotiation calls, they're all like they're uncomfortable, and that's growth, right? That is growth. And so that's really the truth of it is, as you continue to do this stuff. I was scared the first phone call I ever took. I mean, scared. I was like introverted project manager slash engineer hiding behind my big monitor, right? And doing my CAD work and stuff. And then once I started having to talk to sellers, and here we are, 12 years later, over 10,000, right? Easily seller calls, buyer calls later. It's not even a thought of picking up the phone, right? But at one time, just that first call, I was scared to talk. So there's a lot of growth that happens along the way. But yeah, you either like just stay comfortable, and eventually the market will change, the economy will change, and your model will break apart, or you seek to adapt, right? And with that, make some tweaks and changes that will put you in uncomfortable positions. But that's kind of why when like I say, after I started, answering questions in forums, I was in communities and helping other people. It was just seeing people that were struggling with the exact same questions you had maybe months or years ago, and going, man, I could answer this in 10 minutes or in a paragraph or a quick Loom video, and help them out and save them months of headache. And that kind of created, organically, um, joint venture opportunities, and then coaching opportunities, and then I later learned, like, hey, you can't just run all this stuff out of an LLC. I guess you got to like have separate entities, right? Like I'm learning business along the way. I'm just a part-time real estate investor flipping dirt, but I'm learning business along the way, and our CPA and it's like, hey, you really, these need to be separate entities if you're going to fund the deals and joint venture. If you're going to like coach and train, this needs to be siloed and separate from your land flipping company. So this adjacent opportunity presented itself, and we started companies, and not a paid dime of advertising. We grew our education business to, over seven figures. And that was again, never spending anything on ad, just completely word of mouth, doing group coaching, one-on-one coaching. And we had a year where we hit seven figures, and it blew my mind, right? Because it was all, I've done over 2,500 one-on-one Zoom coaching calls, to date. So it's just helping people one-on-one, one at a time, and getting them results. And obviously that leads to a lot of word of mouth, referrals. So I help people. I help somebody, they get some traction. I'm usually the first person they think of if they want to partner on a deal. Landbossfunding.com is our site where, like, if somebody wants to submit a deal, we'll partner with them on that land deal. TravisKing.com is like our education, right? And that's really where we, help people that are new to land. And then if they need help with the funding, or don't have their own money, or their wife won't let them spend the money, we'll help fund the deal as well. And then along the way, we also, all these are things we had to solve our own problems, right? We had to learn, had to get training. We had to find outside money, right? So we're just solving the same problems for people that we solve for ourselves. And then one of those was a CRM. We also have like a land flipping, a specific CRM that is kind
That's
of built
powerful.
off of our automations and our follow up and everything. So it's four separate entities, and that might sound really impressive from the outside, but I'll tell you, they're all boutique, small companies by design, because the goal is to be time rich. I'm going on 20 years married, got four boys, and they're active in sports, and I want to be at every game. So we've had to, if anything, like, temper ambitions along the way to keep the companies micro, keep the companies boutique, so they don't get away from us and overtake my life. So, so it's kind of a balance of staying a size that we feel good about, and staying, profitable, um, and having to say no to a lot of opportunities. Because when first you're wondering if anything will go right, and then when it starts going right, the goalposts start to move, and you have to actually, like, go, okay, what am I after here? I don't want to create a new job for myself, or have a board telling me what to do because I took too much money, or something, right? So yeah, it's a balancing act. After you find traction, momentum, some success, then there becomes those new challenges, and really that's where we're at now, is trying to help people that are along the same journey, but maybe not where we are, and maybe I can help accelerate. They can get to where I am much faster, right? And that's really the goal. And the byproduct is we ended up with like a community of a bunch of like-minded people that are we're all, dealing in dirt in one way or another. We went from flipping dirt, as we discovered opportunity in subdividing, so we got into subdivides. I accidentally mailed to that guy, like I said, that had 130 properties. And then I later realized, oh, I can actually search and intentionally pull lists of people that own only portfolio owners. Right. So we
Okay.
kind of discovered some of these strategies along the way. We flipped some waterfront lots and did really well. So then we started marketing to just waterfront lots. So there's kind of some neat tips and tricks along the way that make us a little different with what we're teaching and helping people with, than a traditional, like, big guru, or, education company.
And you're coming about it, honestly, your version of coaching is my favorite version, where it came by way of, it was a byproduct of something else that lines up with your personality, where you like the desire for somebody that to leave the door open behind them, right? Where you went through all these doors that you had to learn and you've left them open. You've created literal businesses to help people walk through those same doors that you had to figure out how to open up. Those, in my opinion, lead to the best coaches. Those are the folks where it was actually about sharing a message, right? We all like to make money, and that's fine. And I don't have a dog in that fight necessarily. However, I have seen plenty of times where the guru is just better at selling coaching than doing real estate.
And they
And
maybe don't stay active in the market, so as the market changes, they're
exactly,
teaching what worked years ago, and it's not effective now, or, like, as marketing laws change, and they might not be
exactly,
current. So, yeah, that's why I really like when and I had somebody point this out to me, not that I thought of it, but by design, but somebody said, "Hey, I really like that you fund students deals, because you're incentivized to help them become successful, because then they're likely to work with you and partner on the deal, versus just hawking courses," right? Which I also think is kind of like, things are even changing in the education space. We're having more success teaching, like, live workshop style, and saying, "Hey, get out your laptop, do it with me," versus buy my self-paced course, and only 20% of people actually complete it and take action,
right,
right? So I'm finding even that industry is changing a little bit, where people want done with you more than
right,
self-paced courses. So yeah, you gotta
right.
adapt. You gotta adapt with everything.
That's the way I am. I got questions. Anytime I've
Yeah.
done a self-paced course, I'm just sitting there thinking, man, I need to ask a question right now because what you have to say next, I'm stuck. I'm going to think about where I'm at now. I'm not
Yep.
going to pay attention anymore. And it's like, I'm pumped for that, which
And I
is
tell people I think we missed the boat on that guru information education thing anyway, but when I got into it, because you used to be able to create an evergreen course, it could live for 5 or 10 years. But these software companies now, they move at such a fast pace with interface changes, the drop downs, the features, you know what I mean? Like you record your course in 6 months, like the screen might look totally different when they log into it and go, wait a minute, you know? So it's tough.
exactly
So that's why I actually we're able to teach live on today's market, on today's tools, if we do things like in a group and workshop environment. So it's more interactive too. It's not me talking at people. It's like you say, fielding questions, and occasionally you'll encounter one you haven't, and it forces even me to like maybe learn a law in a state that I'm not in or something. So yeah, teaching people, there's a difference between doing something and teaching it. Teaching it forces you to understand it thoroughly, whereas just doing it, we can kind of overlook or skip steps, right?
right. Hey, because you just know it. Like you get so familiar with it, you just know it. And then when you have to lay it out step by step, man, it shows you, wait a second, okay, I need to think about this part again. Okay, I could go on this forever, Travis, man. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm a big land fan anyway, so I've been sitting here taking notes and learning. For those that are listening in that are interested in learning more about your course or following along with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, well, go to travisking.com/free. Again, like I say, I wrote a book. It's hard copy. It's also audio. I'm going to give you the audio version for free anyway. If somebody goes there, you can get familiar with some of these strategies I talk about, like the kind of the micro flip. You know, I walk you through the chapters, which is kind of our journey as we evolved along the way from these smaller micro flips to these bigger, what I call boss flips, these big cash flips, to subdividing to portfolios. I kind of share it's called the Land Investors Playbook, and I share my favorite plays and strategies. So yeah, if they go to travisking.com/free, they'll get the book for free. That'll put them on the email list. We'll let them register for a free land flipping workshop. They can attend the workshop. Again, it's not there's going to be no like huge upsells, right? I'll show you the softwares I use. I'll encourage you to sign them up. You can get as far as you want to get with free training. There's always opportunity to do like group coaching. That's what a lot of people start with. Sometimes that makes more sense than diving into like high ticket one-on-one coaching. So a lot of people start with group coaching, but we've got so much like free stuff to get oriented before you have to worry about getting your credit card out, that don't even have that be a thought, you know, just take advantage of the free audiobook. I've got a podcast too. Start immersing yourself in land, and if it's something that resonates, we're certainly current in today's market because, like I said, since we're funding deals outside of our own markets, that gives us kind of an unfair advantage where we have a read nationwide on the market, not just within our areas.
Love that, man. Well, thanks for giving that away. For everybody listening and watching, check the show notes. We'll make sure that we have that link for you, travisking.com/free. So go check that out. Take advantage of those resources from somebody that's actually doing it. I couldn't agree more with that. Learning from folks who are still day to day doing the business. Travis, man, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing all that knowledge with us. I appreciate your time today. For those out there, again, if you got value out of today's episode, please like this episode, share it with someone else you think you get value. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. We appreciate every single one of you that follows along with us. That's all for today. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Micah.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.